Penn State gets blitzed by Michigan State, 92-61 out in East Lansing. This was not a good one for Mike Rhodes and company, and there are a lot of glaring issues. We got to decide, can any of them be fixed this season?
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into a live men's basketball recap of Locked On Nittany Lions. Thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Zach Seyko, bringing you all things Penn State sports. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Well, Penn State was certainly overmatched, overpowered. I think just the talent gap was too wide here for the Spartans and the Nittany Lions. As the score says it all, 92-61. But this was certainly more of a matchup issue than because Penn State has that 18-point comeback against Ohio State. So it's not that Penn State can't beat good teams, but Michigan State, I don't know what everyone's thinking. Oh, Michigan State was didn't have a conference win. They're struggling. They just turned to 9-5. This is still a Tom Izzo led team. This is still a very talented team that had a strong class. Just they've been stacking recruiting classes, but this most recent one for the Spartans was best and one of the best in the country, depending on where you look. Pretty much a top 5 consensus, and Penn State had to go up against that when they built through the transfer portal, have a coaching change. So this one was not an ideal matchup, but let's talk about what went wrong. Before we get to all of it, subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Become an everydayer. I want to thank the everydayers, and this is an open discussion. Let me know in the comments if you think this basketball team will have any chance of success this season, or if we're writing them off again because one moment they're, struggling, 5-game losing streak. Then they, 18-point comeback against Ohio State, putting some wins together. And now another reality check against Michigan State. And that's exactly what it was, a reality check that Penn State was out-talented, I guess we can call it that, outclassed. Michigan State is a good team and just needs to figure it out because they do have some more young players on this team. But Penn State showed a lot of those issues glared in this one. Let's start with the fact that Michigan State getting out to a 51-26 lead in the first half was par for the course for the Spartans. The Spartans, if you look at the statistics, are actually really good in the first half, and Penn State is not a first half team. So I kind of anticipated that this one was going to be a little lopsided to start. Maybe Penn State would come back. But as they showed, they did not come back. I'm not saying to come back to win, but come back to maybe make it a little more respectable. And Penn State was a 13, 14-point underdog in this game. And Michigan State jumping out to that significant lead, that 25-point lead at home is going to doom a lot of teams in the NBC broadcast, saying things like Penn State might as well hop on the bus. There's no chance. And this is where you play for, your next game. You try to perfect some things. And I don't know how much they did in this case because they took some steps backwards because they lack on defense in terms of overall scoring defense, but they're good at winning the turnover battle. They showed that they had a little more prowess rebounding the basketball, but Michigan State shot the lights out to begin with, 65% in the first half and then 56% for the game. And 3-point shooting, 47% compared to Penn State's 10%. So Penn State's strengths this season are actually offense and the way that they can score from so many different, they can get scoring from so many different players. But when Kanye Clary is the only one that's doing all the scoring, and Kanye Clary's had a great season, but I look at this team and you need more. You can't have this kind of game from Ace Baldwin. You can't. 2 points and if it wasn't for Nick Kern to have 10 points in this game, Kanye Clare would have been the only one in double figures. Now, granted, 15 of those came in the second half where it was a lot of garbage time, but this is your shooting was supposed to be better. Yes, we know that Penn State isn't the greatest shooting team, but 3 of what? I wanna look at those. I wanna look at that number again from three-point range. 3 of 29. 3 of 29. That's unacceptable. Michigan State has good shooting defense. They're also very good one-on-one. Penn State plays a lot of one-on-one basketball. They play a lot of ISO basketball, and that's why Kanye Clary is having the season that he has because he is confident, he's poised, he's capable of playing one-on-one. And the Nittany Lions know that. Mike Rhodes knows this. That's why you have those players like Ace Baldwin, Kanye Clary, because they can create. But it doesn't seem like anybody else can create their own shot. So Penn State's got to do something differently if they want to maximize their offense. You just went up against a buzzsaw defense. Michigan State in the first half allows teams to score maybe about 23, 24 points in the first half, which is second best in all of the country out of all Division One mid-majors, right? Everybody. They're number 2 in terms of first half defense. And it showed against Penn State, and that's why they're able to win games the way that they do, and that'll probably carry over throughout the season for them. But I watched this Penn State team and miscues, miscommunication, the broadcast team pointing it out for them that they don't know exactly what defense they're running at a given time. And those things, we knew this building from the transfer portal that this would take time, but it's really going to be amplified against talented teams. Right now, is Michigan State a great team? Are they the team that everybody projected to be in the top 5 and possibly win an NCAA title in March Madness? No, but do they have the talent to, if it all comes together, eventually do that? Yes, you went up against a tournament caliber team. I fully believe that Tom Izzo and Michigan State will make a deep March Madness run. They will make a deep run into the tournament. So that's what Penn State was facing, and Penn State is not that. Penn State is not that. They were already kind of teetering on the fact of, are they a tournament team? Can they fix everything throughout the season? Because that's what this is. It's constant practice for them to continue to get better because Penn State, for the first half of the season, when they finally reach the mid-mark, they are not going to be a first half of the season team. This is a second half of the season team because you have so many different, you have a new coach, you have new players, you have a new playing dynamic. None of these guys have ever played with each other before. So now you have to take elements of Micah Shrewsbury's system, Mike Rhodes' system, players that were in Mike Rhodes' system, players that were all from other places, and combine that together in this melting pot, and it's not going to work right away. Eventually it will because Ace Baldwin's a damn good basketball player. Kanye Clary's really good at basketball. And you want to see more from Kudus Wahab. You want to see more from, I think Puff Johnson's been a little underwhelming. I thought that when Penn State was able to add a player like him out of the transfer portal, I know dealing with the suspected injuries early on, but Puff Johnson was supposed to be one of those guys that really did make this lineup a lot better, and we just haven't seen that. So my issue is outside of Kanye Clary, nobody's emerged. Nobody can emerge. It's really just Kanye Clary, Ace Baldwin, mainly Kanye Clary. They're not even alternating, but it's either Kanye Clary by himself with Ace Baldwin or just Kanye Clary and then everybody else. Penn State needs more. This isn't an identity issue. This is a player issue in the fact of somebody needs to make that step forward and be that third option. Michigan State shuts down Kanye Clary in the first half because, again, 21 points looks great in the box score, except you have 15 of them in the second half. So is it really worth anything? Ace Baldwin, your veteran, who was the A10 player of the year, defensive player, 2 points. It's not going to get it done. So that's why Penn State struggled against Michigan State, because Michigan State was able to amplify the problems that Penn State has. Rebounding, overall team defense, communication. It was a road game. I'm not saying at home this would have been that much different. Still, Penn State needs to figure out who that third option is going to be, because when somebody like Ace Baldwin doesn't have it that night, and I'm disappointed in the shooting because individually, Leo Boyle can shoot. Zach Hicks can shoot. Kanye Clary can shoot. Ace Baldwin can shoot. Puff Johnson can shoot. Jameel Brown can shoot. DeMarco Dunn can shoot. And nobody was able to find no one was able to find a basket tonight unless it was within 10 feet, right? Anything that was long range was almost everything was just a miss. But this Michigan State team is a very good team. No one should have been fooled by the 8-5 record that they didn't have a win in conference. I had little to no optimism for this one, going up against them in East Lansing. But can these issues be fixed? Will Penn State be in a position to be competitive down the stretch, or is this really a first season just to get Mike Rhodes situated? We're going to continue to discuss. We have a go further into a game recap, look at Penn State's schedule, and then discuss some of those problems and how they can be fixed and which ones specifically need to be fixed. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. You got to download the Gametime app because buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all of your sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. And I've used the Gametime app. My favorite things about the Gametime experience are the flash deals on last minute tickets. So you're looking to go to an event last minute and you get flash deals on those tickets. It's easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area, and you get image views of the seats. So you're not second guessing yourself. You're not wondering, what did I see beforehand? Am I going to be sitting and having that same view? You get accurate views in the Gametime app. Gametime is the place to get the last second deals on football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. So snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And the Locked On Podcast Network is making history. Locked On Sports Today is launching the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering each and every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Penn State men's basketball again losing to Michigan State 92-61. Let's check in on the comments. I appreciate you joining the live show. This team has to learn how to share the ball, and it will be a long season. Kenny, thanks for the feedback. Yeah, when it comes to this team, they're an ISO team because they have players that are good at creating their own shots, but it's too good for them, right? In this case, it's too good for their own good. So Kanye Clary, Ace Baldwin, if one of those guys has a cold game, it almost sets up the fact that Penn State can be shut down just by taking away one player. And if both of them at the same time, then they're absolutely doomed. They are one of the worst teams when it comes to assists per game, so they're not sharing the basketball. Edward says that loss was beyond brutal. Yeah, but it was a reality check. It was a reality check from Mike Rhodes and company because this Big Ten schedule is unforgiving. It will not let up. And Penn State needs to have these kinds of games because then it can get worse when you play teams like Purdue. We've seen Wisconsin become better. Northwestern was a really good team a season ago. There's always Michigan, Iowa. All these teams are competitive. Indiana, Rutgers. Any of them on any given Saturday or any given college basketball night is good and competitive. David says, just show up and compete, give effort and fight and battle, and the player in front of you. Don't talk about the talent gap. If you play fundamentally sound basketball, you have chances to score. I mean, Michigan State's got a pretty good, talented team. I know their record is not what might lead you to believe that they are a super talented team, because this is the first win in the Big Ten. And they lost to Nebraska. They've lost to Wisconsin. But they also did beat a top 10 Baylor team convincingly. So they played Duke. We're finding out that James Madison's really good at basketball this season. So it's not like this was, well, Michigan State isn't actually, no, Michigan State can be a deep tournament type of team once they figure it out. That's what Penn State went up against, a Final Four potential team in Michigan State. Edwards says this performance by PSU was beyond brutal with the amount of bricks Penn State shot tonight. They could have built a 5-bedroom, 4-bathroom, 4-car garage with an oversized deck to go with that. Very clever with what Penn State was able to do with all the missed shots. It felt like this goes back to communication. This goes back to sharing the basketball, and everybody can see it, and the statistics back it up as well. When Penn State doesn't collectively pass the ball around, they're bad at it. They're assisting. They're not assisting each other. I don't want to claim and say, well, Ace Baldwin's a ball hog. Kanye Clary's a ball hog. That's not it. It's also the way that the offense is drawn up. The offense is drawn up to a point where there's an ISO, and they isolate those players to win one-on-one battles because they can. But when you take one of those away, it's going to be tough to do. So let's recap this game a little further. I started to get into it, but when you look at the box score, yes, the first half, I kind of expected Michigan State to jump out to a 15 to 20 point lead just because Michigan State is really good in the first half and Penn State is not. So those two things meet together. You're going to see Michigan State capitalize on a weakness. Penn State is an offensive team. They play a little faster. They just don't have all the defensive assets. And it's still part of the problem of trying to merge all these different aspects together. So you want to run, you want to play fast. You got to take Qudus Wahab off the floor, and you don't have Faber Ire at full strength just yet. So that component of it. And then you need to play. So if you want to play fast, you got to sacrifice the size. And then you have the problem of rebounding. And then so you sacrifice the people of Wahab and Ire and your taller players for rebounds because Puff Johnson needs to get a little more involved on the glass. I think he's doing what he can, but he's kind of your next man to look towards rebounds. You can't just assume that Wahab's going to grab each and every one and he's going to have the tank to be able to play a full game. I don't know how often we're going to see Wahab play 30 minutes consistently. He gave Penn State 22 tonight, but to see Wahab go for 30, 35 minutes is just not feasible. So Penn State kind of has to get the most out of him when he is on the floor. But I look at this team, and Kanye Clary has really emerged as the number one scorer until Ace Baldwin finds a way to either change his game because he's not the face of Mike Rhodes' team anymore. He's not. So does that mean he needs to be more of a point guard and somebody that complements Kanye Clary, or can they still kind of split? Kanye Clary is not the veteran here. He's the second-year player, and he's the one. Now, if this was Ace Baldwin having 21 points and Kanye Clary having maybe 2 to 10 or somewhere significantly behind, that would make sense to me. But this is still, I'm trying to kind of comprehend how Kanye Clary is the one that Ace Baldwin and Mike Rhodes came together as a package deal, and Kanye Clary has taken over. And that's a testament to how good Kanye Clary is. But it's just surprising to me, someone who spent time in Mike Rhodes' system, that we're seeing Kanye Clary reap the benefits of it and Ace Baldwin taking a back seat. And again, when you just have a bad shooting, see, Kanye Clary is better, I think, is better at getting to the basket. Ace Baldwin's a better shooter, but what we've seen from, again, going back to matchup, so teams that are better at guarding the basket might be able to take away Kanye Clary a little better. Ace Baldwin, who's a better shooter, and teams that don't have as good shooting defense, that's when we'll see Ace Baldwin have those kinds of nights. But Michigan State, really good at shooting defense, one-on-one ISO. Kanye Clary was able to create more. I'm just looking for that. I look up and down this box score, and I don't see anybody that has, again, that potential to be that third option. It's not going to be Wahab. You would think Puff Johnson would be, and maybe that time will come as he's back to 100%. I'm still going to, this is a long season. We just opened up January in 2024. All of January, all of February, the beginning of March, and then the Big Ten tournament. So you'll start to figure out, this is in January is fundamental for figuring out, is it going to be Puff Johnson? Is that who that next player is going to be? Or can you rely on the shooting of Zach Hicks? Can you rely on somebody to come off the bench because Leo Boyle didn't give you much tonight? You had Nick Kern emerge a little bit, but just and he's more reliable on defense. He's your defensive guy. You're not going to ask him to score every night. So Jameel Brown shot a lot of threes, but didn't make any. And then DeMarco Dunn, Raquandis Mitchell, those guys are veterans that have played a lot of college basketball. What is their take on it? They have been a little lackluster to this point. So Penn State shooting 32% from the field, 3 of 29 from three-point range. That's the story of the game. You were awful shooting, but it understandably so, because Michigan State is really good with its shooting defense. And Penn State, I know Michigan State hasn't played a basketball game in a while, but this is where defense benefits you. You had a Penn State team that is more offensively sound. Michigan State overall is much better, but they're a defensive team first. They're a defensive team first, and it shows with the scoring allowed per game. So when you're coming off of a long stretch of not playing any competitive basketball, you just have where you're playing a no-name school, right? and in Penn, like Lemoyne, right? That's what you're coming off of. Michigan State's going to win these kinds of games at home. Penn State's a second half team. Michigan State's a first half team. Penn State's an offensive team. Michigan State is a defensive team at its core. So all these things came together. So yes, I am not surprised that Michigan State is able to win by 31 points. They have players like Malik Hall. They have players like Hogard. Overall, Penn State, and I don't think Penn State was ever going to really be ultra competitive in this game. This one was going to get out of hand, and it got out of hand pretty fast. I hopefully they corrected some issues in the second half, but it didn't really seem like it because it was just so far out of reach. I didn't see anything other than you kept the score close. You kept it within 6 for the second half, but the shooting didn't change. The defense didn't change all that much. I thought Penn State was a little more aggressive on the glass, but that can only get you so much because Penn State's still not a good rebounding team. Michigan State always got the rebounds it needed to get. It felt like Penn State didn't get any of those second chance. And the biggest, I think one of the things that went unnoticed was the fact that Michigan State had all these points off of turnovers and Penn State didn't. Penn State's defense relies on forcing turnovers. They lost the turnover battle, and they weren't scoring off of the turnovers much that they did get, more so in the second half, but in the first half, it was very apparent. For Michigan State, at one point, it was 18-0 in points from turnovers scored. That's a formula for losing basketball games. So can these problems be fixed? Can Penn State fix any of these, or are these going to be very apparent throughout the season? Let's find out on the other side of this break. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Locked On. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is super easy to use. I use it myself. There's so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab, which is convenient for you. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays. So you can already have those bets crafted for you and so much more. If you like any of that, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And in this final segment, again, I thank everyone who's joined the live show, and I appreciate all of you that are everydayers. Become an everydayer if you're not already, to keep up with the latest analysis around Penn State football, men's basketball. Subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts as well. And shout out to HappyValleyInsider.com, your go-to for other Penn State news and info, Penn State rivals. So can these problems be fixed? Rebounding, defense, spreading the ball around, utilizing your teammates and not having it be so isolated. Yes, they can, to an extent. Okay, so the shooting is one of those elements as well, and I think that's the easy one. I think Penn State can correct its shooting woes. I think you just went up against a really good Michigan State defense that is good at pressuring offenses and making it difficult, getting hands in your face to make your shot selection. Because Penn State didn't have a good shot selection, and when it did, it Michigan State was able to just kind of just set them off course. So Penn State, like I said, I've named everybody that I think is a good, talented shooter on this team. The problem is not the fact that they can't shoot the basketball, it's setting up shots. And that's going to be the difficult part of it because Penn State, again, has one of the lowest assists per game from the team in all of the country. That's very telling. So that's great that Kanye Clary and Ace Baldwin are best at creating shots, but at some point, you're going to have to give up some of those shots to create for others. And I know Mike Rhodes and this coaching staff can do that. There's a lot of good minds on this team, but the players, when you have Kanye Clary and Ace Baldwin as good as they are at ISO offense, none of the other players can do that. So, I mean, some of them are okay at it. Like I would think Puff Johnson can create his own shot, but I would say Kanye Clary and Ace Baldwin are miles ahead of that. So Penn State's going to play some, and that's not surprising given that this is a transfer portal team. This team-oriented basketball is going to take some time to gel and get together. That's chemistry, that's building trust. And games like this certainly don't build that trust. So do I think Penn State's offense will be better down the stretch? Absolutely, because Michigan State's one of the best defensive teams in all of the country. But will this overall problem of sharing the basketball and playing team-oriented, will it continue? Probably for a good, this is just, you can't try to romanticize of what you would like Penn State to be. This year, Penn State, the offense flows through Kanye Clary and Ace Baldwin. And to this point, they are players that are going to take the shot, not pass it up. And I don't blame them when they are the best offensive assets. Let's move over to rebounding. Rebounding, it's not like these other players aren't going to get taller. You have to hope that Faber Ire and Puff Johnson eventually return to 100% because those are your guys that are going to attack the glass. Kanye Clary is not going to out-rebound anybody on opposing teams because he's your guard. Same thing with Ace Baldwin. I think you need a more coordinated effort where people attack the glass and not it's just, yep, it's Q Wahab. Go up there and get every rebound you can find. Other guys are going to have to pitch in some sort of manner. I like seeing for someone like Nick Kern. Again, he does all the ugly things for Penn State men's basketball. So I actually want to see more of him. I actually don't want to see, maybe he starts. I don't want to see him off the bench as much. Maybe put him at the 3 and then have Puff Johnson and Zach Hicks rotate in. This offensive lineup to start, or this lineup in general to start, was a little interesting to me. I would like to see Kern out there in the starting lineup and maybe get some more minutes just because he does the ugly things, the defense. He'll go get the rebound. He can guard anybody. He's not the tallest in the world, 6'5", 6'6", but he can guard your 5. He can guard your 1. That's how good he is. So seeing 22 minutes out of him and then the offensive production of 10 points, I would like to see him play a little more. But so back to my point of you need more players to go get rebounds since Wahab and Ire are your tallest players. What happens when you go up against Purdue and you play Zach Edey? What are you going to do there? Because Wahab and Edey, for the most part, will just cancel each other out. Then what? What does Penn State have to go get those rebounds? Defensively, Penn State, it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation because some of your offensive assets, like a Leo O'Boyle is really good at shooting, and you would like to have him out there on the floor more often than not, but he's a defensive liability. He's a defensive liability, and especially if he plays a cold game, there's no point in having him on the floor. So Penn State definitely has the being team-oriented, trust, chemistry is all going to get better over time. I think Penn State's going to run into the fact of it might be too little, too late. You get towards February and March, and that's maybe when they turn the corner. This January is going to be a defining month for them to figure that out. But we're starting to see an identity of them that they play ISO basketball. They're good offensively. They're not great defensively. They're going to try to force turnovers. So they just need to do more of that. And against Michigan State, that has this combination of veterans, young, true freshman talent, good coaching, was a reality check of, yes, Penn State's never going to be able to match up well against these kinds of teams. But remember, they had the 18-point comeback against Ohio State. So this Penn State's not a bottom feeder in the Big Ten. Big Ten conference is as tough as it gets when it's college men's basketball. But are they going to be on the lower side of the conference? Absolutely. Are they the worst team in the Big Ten? No, they are not, especially if they can just maximize. They have to maximize what they do well. Since you don't rebound, force more turnovers. You can pass the ball. Eventually, teams are going to start doubling Kanye Clary if he's going to put 20 points, 20 points, 20 points every single night. Eventually, defenses are going to have to adapt to that because it's so easy. So once that happens, more players will get involved. But I would say the biggest keys, force more turnovers, but also distribute the ball a little better. Find a way to do that. Find that third complement, because it's really just the Ace Baldwin and Kanye Clary show. And it's been more so the Kanye Clary show than anything else. And that's fine. You have a number one, but we'll see how Penn State adapts to that. They do need spectators see it. The spectators see it as well. We'll go back to the comments one more time before we wrap this up. I hope we can beat Michigan. So we can look ahead to Michigan in this one. For Penn State, I would say that Michigan is probably favored in this one, even though a spread hasn't come out yet, just simply from the fact of they do have more talent. Juwan Howard has been coaching longer at Michigan State, and they've recruited well, and Penn State is still. So right now, ESPN gives Michigan about a 62% chance to win that game. And Penn State, now they don't have Dickinson anymore. They don't have Hunter Dickinson, so that's a good thing. So maybe this one's back in the Bryce Jordan Center. So Penn State will have a more ideal matchup, but I would still lean the Wolverines. Penn State, that's a more winnable game for Penn State. That is a much more winnable game for Penn State. Day also added, Zach, where do you get that Penn State schedule tablet that is behind you? That is a team ticker sign. You want to go to teamticker.com and check them out. Happy because they've been a sponsor on this show. So that is a team ticker sign, teamticker.com. And let's end it here. That's going to do it for a live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. I appreciate all your comments, all your feedback. If you're not already, become an everydayer. Subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. And we got a fun episode for tomorrow. I welcome back Corey Geiger from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Some of you might remember him for his infamous exchange with James Franklin of the Just Throw It Deep. That's how it got started. Well, did Penn State and James Franklin mislead college football spectators about opt-outs in the bowl game? Is Penn State not necessarily doomed, but are they fighting an uphill battle for the 2024 season? That's going to be discussed on the next episode here on Locked On Nittany Lions. So be on the lookout for that and more Penn State football coverage, men's basketball with wrestling and men's hockey on the way. Keep it right here on Locked On Nittany Lions.